Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming along. I'm going to lampshade myself right from the outset here and go, this talk is very unfinished. You are the guinea pigs for it. It's kind of a last minute thing pulled together because instead of sat writing this talk over the weekend, I decided to drive all the way down to Brighton of all places and get a tattoo. So yeah, apologies. So this talk's titled Don't Be the Coyote. And obviously from this first slide, you can see we talk about Wile E. Coyote. And hopefully some of this will become apparent as we go along. If any of you read the little summary, this is a talk about a tool called RoadRunner, which probably gives away the punchline now, which is an application server for PHP. But why am I saying don't be the coyote? Well, let's start back at the beginning. So PHP has been around for quite a long time, 26, 27 years. Depends on whether you take it from when PHP started being written or PHP got released as a thing. The URL on screen gives you more information than I can about it. But it's been going for a long time, and it's evolved and developed and become a powerhouse in its own right, able to do and drive the largest proportion of the web to be able to claim that crown, albeit it doesn't claim the most favorite languages. It's still well known, well trusted, and well used. And as it's gotten older, it's gotten better. It's evolved from PHP 3 and 4 into 5 being a solid mainstay for heaven knows how long now. And then we moved on swiftly past 6 into 7, and we now have 8 and 8.1 knocking on the door, ready for us to move on. So it's an opportunity to sort of celebrate what PHP can do and the things that it's now capable of. PHP also has worked hand in hand with Apache for many, many years. I'm sure most of the people here have used it at some point. If you haven't used Apache, you might have used Nginx. Both are solid workhorses designed to really be versatile and capable of handling multiple types of workload. It's been the web server of choice for a large number of languages over the decades. Perl, PHP, Ruby, Python, a load of others that I don't even care to remember. But sticking with PHP, you've all basically used one of these two things at some point if you've developed a website. There are a few others, like HTTP, Cherokee, and they all follow the similar sort of pattern in how they were designed. They've been around a long time, as long as PHP, if not longer. And when you've used PHP, you've been running it in one of a few different modes, and each one has been designed with different advantages. Trying to make it faster, trying to make it smoother, more flexible, better with memory. And all of these things in combination have made PHP better. In fact, it's Coyote approved. The big problem, if we just wait a moment, is that we believe this in the PHP community. We believe in PHP and the value of what it can do and the tools and the ecosystem we run it in. But you talk to many other developers that don't have exposure to PHP and what it's capable of. They'll complain. They'll complain about all sorts of things: performance, parallelism, and concurrency. It's not suitable for microservices. I hear all the time. Oh, you shouldn't run it in a container like that using Apache or Nginx. Doesn't support native protocols like GRPC. The ecosystem doesn't work. It doesn't come with built-in tools and services and all sorts of things. And I've heard this argument so many times over my 20-year career. And I unfortunately have to say I don't disagree. PHP does fall short in some areas. It's a great language. My moniker, PHP Voice Count, is very much built around the premise that this is my pocket knife. I'm out in the wilderness trying to survive, and PHP is the tool I have at hand. And I can do an awful lot with it. But I can't do everything. Or I should say, I shouldn't do everything. About 4 years ago, I started looking at lots of other languages, trying to diversify what I could do. Obviously, I had PHP and JavaScript and a lot of old ancient languages that I won't ever go back to, but I'll still claim as things I've done professionally. And I started looking at other languages to try and go, where do I diversify? How do I get better at what I do? And I moved through a number of different languages, Scala, Python, Ruby, a bit of C, some Dart, some Kotlin, and eventually I settled on the wrong slide. Oh, I love that when I do that. I meant to move this around. I settled on Go. Go's a fantastic language. It's easy to learn. It's a really simple syntax. It's one of the simplest syntaxes I've used in a very long time. Concurrency by design. It has the premise of Go routines, which are designed to be really flexible, adaptable, and powerful, strongly typed. And I've got a big long list here, and I could keep talking, but I'm not here to sell Go to you. I'll let Go do that on its own. What I am here to say, though, is that I went down the path of learning Go, and I found it to be a really powerful, really versatile language for doing some really specific tasks. I wanted to be able to do some very low-level routines that would excel at things like concurrency and I/O and processing data. I didn't want to use Python for processing data because Python inherently is slow, and everything good about Python is written in C. I didn't really want to mess with that. I didn't want to start faffing around with file I/O when I could have just written in C. Go kind of ticked all of these boxes. So I've been using Go professionally for a while now, and it's been really successful. But I still use PHP. I still go back to PHP as a language. And I still have the discussions with people. I kind of go, well, why don't you write this tool, this thing in another language that's designed for the problem you're trying to solve? Which takes us back to the previous slide, in that I can do, and people can do, anything they want to do with PHP. I can make it happen in any way that I need to. It's that versatile and adaptable a language, but it doesn't mean I should. If any of you are familiar with the cartoons, you know what happens next. But because we have to be a kid-friendly show, we can't show that slide. So what do we do? How do we move forward? How do we get the best out of PHP and bring something else to bear? And that's where RoadRunner comes in. RoadRunner is, as it says on the screen right now, a high-performance PHP application server load balancer and process manager written in Golang. This is a tool that will allow us to do a phenomenal amount of things that don't come natively to PHP, that don't come natively to tools like Apache and Nginx. It's basically taking both elements to the next level. But what does it really offer? I'm hearing people thinking at the moment. And this is another big long list, and I'm not going to read through this list because we'll be here all night. I'll let you have a breeze through now, and I'll make sure the slides are available for you to have a look in more detail. Most of this is cut and paste from the readmes in the right places when you finally go looking for them. but it gives quite a lot of features. A lot of these don't come out of the box with anything out there at the moment. Not with PHP, not with Apache, not with Nginx, not with using defaults. That you have to build a lot of these tools and a lot of these things for you. Key for me, where I'm working at the moment, we've now started on a process of trying to work towards microservices, to work towards something that's really flexible and adaptable, containerized, and really forward-thinking in how we build to fail. And we needed something that can really handle a massive, massive workload, because we were very aware that the monoliths we have scale very specifically, very cleanly. But if we were to break up into microservices, the amount of traffic we are going to have is going to increase tenfold. So we wanted something really that can handle really high throughput. So we did a lot of looking around. We looked at quite a few different options. And the one that we kept coming back to that was really easy, quick to adopt, really powerful, and fit in with how we wanted to build things going forward was RoadRunner. So that's the end of my slides, unfortunately. So I'm going to say this is the point where I was driving from Brighton rather than writing slides. So instead, I'm going to stop sharing the screen and I'm going to share with you some code that actually show you what RoadRunner is, how it works for us, and what you can do with it. There we go. So hopefully we should all be able to see the version of Visual Studio Code. If not, just holler. If you can all see it, I'll just plow on. So you can see here, it's a really simple screen we've got here with some files on the left, a composer file, quite obviously, nice and simple, where I've got two dependencies, just two. I've got a PHP file with a really simple worker that you can see here is tied to something called RoadRunner. And you kind of go, well, this is all PHP. Where's the Go? Where's that part there? The key here is that the default is that it all comes pre-compiled, pre-configured as this little RR binary that we can see there. We'd also then have a YAML file, and that's it. That's all we need to get started. We can basically say from our YAML file that we want to create a server. The command is going to be a PHP command, and we're going to run the server file. And we're going to bind that to a HTTP server with an address and port 8080, and we'll say there's going to be 4 workers that's going to start. So that's it. That's how simple this can be to start with. Now we have, obviously, it's the most trivial example, hello world. And to run you through it, we're going to basically sit and wait for requests to come in, convert them into a request object, create a new response, write an output to that response, and then spit it back out. That's literally it. It's the simplest version I can make of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the RoadRunner binary, and I'm just going to tell it to serve. There's some same default. It's going to look in the current folder. It's going to find the RR YAML file, and it will self-configure. You can see now that running this, it started 4 workers. That's why we've got 4 entries here. So we started 4 servers on 4 different PIDs. So we now have 4 versions of this running. So we have 4 servers running concurrently. And this can be really easily scaled. Just altering those workers will make it up or down as you want to, and it will be able to do more things as we start developing the program. If I then go to my terminal, wrong one. Let's close that one and split the screen instead. So you can see that I get my hello world response back. And you can see on the left that we've had a response. It's actually done something, which is fantastic. That's exactly what we wanted. So this obviously is really trivial. It's almost simple. It's simpler almost than you trying to use the PHP development server. The difference here is that this configuration, as I've got it right now, bar being wrapped up inside a container, is actually production ready. Where you've got something like the development server running, that's great, but you have to do all sorts of other things and wrap it around in other bits. This could, in theory, be production ready in, well, we'll build a Docker file, publish it, and off we go. And that's the beauty of this. It's a really simple server that's configured specifically for PHP. Most specifically, PSR7 compliant workflows. As you can see here, we're using the Nyholm PSR7 framework, which is just a really super duper light PSR7 compliant interface. And it just makes things really simple. There are obviously other PSR7 tools out there. You use the one that you prefer and it has the features that you want. I'm just using this because it's just super duper lightweight and makes it very simple to just get this built as a demo for us. But what's next? And you say, you're kind of going, that's great, that's Hello World. Hello World's about as useful as a chocolate teapot. So let's have another look and see what we've got. I switched to another branch quickly to save me having to do any writing of code. And if I go to our configuration file, I've added some extra config. I've added in a public folder. So what have I done? I've basically said to the server, I want to be able to serve all content from the public folder that ends in JPEG or PNG, and I want to forbid everything else. And in my public folder I've created this, we've got a Coyote JPEG and a dangerous JavaScript file. Obviously, the JavaScript file is super duper dangerous, so do be aware that this is volatile code. And we have our image all ready for us to work with. So if I were to restart my server, great, it's running for me again. I can now try and there we go. So it has pulled it out. It's pulled back the binary. Obviously, I'm not going to do anything to put it on the screen because that would really make things very messy. But the image is there. I can then also try the JavaScript file. And it's just giving me my default hello world because it doesn't map to anything. So it's a really easy way to do some very simple mapping for a static web server. So great. So we've got our public folder mapping. We've got some logic mapping. What else can we do beyond that? So next we kind of go, okay, well, that reloading of the server was a bit painful. So let's get rid of the need to have to reload. So I can tell it to reload any files that it finds. Say check every second. Look for files that end in PHP, and then for any HTTP services that we're running, we want to recursively scan all the files and folders, ignore vendor and include PHP Go and Markdown files in the blob, starting from the root of the project. So I'll start that running again, and I just realized as I'm running this, oh, you know what? That hello world needs a couple more exclamation marks. So I'm going to save that, and we can see in the terminal we've had some updates. You can see it saying the workers have changed, that the plugin for HTTP is successfully started, and if I go and retrieve, my hello world now has multiple exclamation marks. So now we've got something that makes it really easy to work with and dynamic. But this is all PHP, I think you're saying. You're a noisy bunch. What do we want to do beyond PHP? So really useful tools then is get rid of that and discard all its files. There we go. So server's restarted again. I'm just going to stop it to clear some settings. So you can now see that we've updated our server. I've now added in some metrics. So we now have here a little bit of magic with a library called GoBridge, which actually helps to interact with the RPC element of the server. And now we can communicate directly with RoadRunner and the Go libraries inside to start publishing metrics from inside our code. So the question is, how do we get those metrics out? Well, in our config, we already have some new settings. We've got a new metrics server. We'll shove it on a port. We'll tell it to collect them from the applications as they're coming through. Give it the key, give it a description. I can now run this, and if I go here, so for any of you that are familiar with Prometheus style metrics, some of this will look very familiar. As you can see at the top here, we've got an application counter that's set to 0. If I live demos, gotta love them. Did I? There we go. So I'll just do that a couple of times, and we'll go and check our metrics once again. Scrolling back to the top of our metrics. We can now see that our app metric counter has incremented 3 times, and we incremented 1, 2, 3 requests. So again, really trivial, but one of those things where it's really useful to have that already pre-built. You don't need to go through having to set up a separate endpoint inside of your application. You don't have to manage how that's promoted, populated out into your Prometheus instance. It doesn't even have to Prometheus. You can extend that functionality to other tools if you wanted to do so. But you have a really simple way to now get that information out of your application and exposed in a really robust way, which is something you don't get by default out of other things. You would normally have to start programming this in to your application and publish it out through Apache or Nginx. This is sort of an out-of-the-box easy win. We also have another one, which is almost exactly the same, and it's a health check, just checking to make sure that you can access your HTTP server. All really valuable things when you start working with containerized applications, start working with orchestration tools like Kubernetes. And then we can move on. Again, a couple of extra features, but not the most exciting. So I'm going to show you something a little bit more exciting now, in that we have the concept of middleware. For any of you that are PSR7 aficionados, you'll understand how a lot of this works. But the premise of the application is very much based on the middleware pipeline. And you can intercept that. You can intercept that at any point you want in the PHP or in the Go code. So one of the big features that is available is that you can extend RoadRunner yourself in a very clean, very simple way if you have some familiarity with Go. So I'm going to show you some Go code now. You will have seen on the left that there's now a folder called RoadRunner binary has appeared. I'm going to expand that out, and some of this is going to look horrendous to you because the folder structure is not very clean. It's not what you would expect from PHP, but it works. There is some logic to it when you look at it. But I'm going to jump into this little internal folder and this little middleware folder, and I've already created a file near middleware.go where I've created instantiated a package, which is essentially the way that they handle namespaces. I've imported in a few bits and pieces around HTTP. I've created a struct, so equivalent to a class or an object in PHP. I've bound a couple of methods to that object, so the init, the middleware, and the main methods. And I'm essentially grabbing my middleware, passing it the next handler, and returning it a handler. And this function that we're returning is just part of the middleware pattern. That'll get executed as part of the stack, but we can do our own thing and pass it on. So here I've said, let's just pretend that we've done something useful, sensible. Maybe we're going to handle authentication at the server level from here on in, meaning your microservice never needs to think about authentication. Something else is handling it for it, which is one of the use cases that we're working on at the moment. And one of the reasons we want to be able to have the flexibility of being able to write like this and being able to do something at the server level rather than at the code level. So we've got our middleware function here, which is really easily registered with the server. We don't have to add lots of code outside of that. We basically just define it as an include, and we then just register it as a plugin with the system. That's it. That's all we really need to do. Now, what I do need to do is remember a command. Let's see if it's my history. It is. So I'm going to say go run. I'm going to tell it to run this main file, which is the entry point. I'm going to tell it to run the internal kind of serve from that and pass it the config file from where we were running before. If I did that from the right place. So this is now running the customized version of the of RoadRunner server. Again, it's the same config. It's the 4 workers that we had before. I'm going to just curl our server, and we can now see that we've got a different response that's saying hello authenticated user with the token of ABC XYZ. As we can see from the Go file, that's hard coded in, which in a real world situation it wouldn't be. We'd have a nice magic JWT token or something there that would handle that for us. And in our server, we can now see that there's a really simple just if statement to switch out hello world for hello authenticated user. But that's handled, as I say, at the server side. Now, the beauty of this is that the performance of some of these tasks, so things like doing very mundane tasks with authentication, takes away from your business logic. Being able to abstract that into the server as something that's really mundane, something that's designed to be super highly performant, something that can scale into millions of requests, depending on how you write it and how you configure it, means that you've got a lot of scope to really laser focus on using PHP at what it's good for, which is good for really complex domains that need the most valuable thing I'm finding at the moment with PHP is the fact that you can have dynamic includes, variable variables. You can do some really clever things with PHP at runtime because it's an interpreted language, whereas Go or C or one of the other compiled languages becomes really convoluted, very difficult to try and make flexible in a lot of ways without having to compromise on the developer experience. And one of the key things is balancing that developer experience with the effectiveness of our applications. I mean, this is where you get things like Laravel. Laravel's a fantastic framework, and it's designed around convention. It's designed around the developer experience being paramount. But in that, there are some compromises that you make and you accept as part of using that framework in how you apply certain things. You wouldn't necessarily want to use, say, Eloquent for very large, very data-heavy batch jobs because it's designed to be more of an active record kind of pattern. So you have to pick and choose the right things. But Laravel's a fantastic framework, and it's had so much adoption because it gives you that great experience and it gives you some of those choices. And what I'm hoping is that after this presentation, you'll go and have a look at RoadRunner, and you'll find that that's another valuable tool to add to your toolbox. It becomes another important choice you can make into how you can optimize your code to maybe not be the most developer friendly, but it's not the most unpleasant thing to work with. And it can make a massive difference to increasing the overall performance of the code you write and how you can design systems to be far more effective and adaptable and be able to introduce some new features along the way. That, unfortunately, is where I've run out of steam. So I've been talking for a little while now. I'd like to sort of say that the floor's open to any questions, and I'll try and fill in as best as I can for my lack of additional demo and lack of slides.
Thank you for that, Matt.
Oh, no problem.
Does anyone have any questions for Matt at all?
I've realised my pacing's really off. I'm like 10 minutes shorter than I was earlier. I practiced this, so and I missed out a couple of bits as I went along, but I can't remember what they were because the joys of having to try and wing this after running home and getting kids from school.
You did well considering you've just done that on a whim.
It was a really interesting talk. Thanks a lot. And I've got a question.
Fire away, Tom.
So with using RoadRunner, would you recommend to always use it, or to be like a use case where
No. It's not the best thing to use in every situation. So
yeah,
it depends what you're trying to achieve. So if you've got an application that you're running that you can write as a PSR7 style application, I would say, yeah, RoadRunner's a really easy win. But if you're wanting to run, say, WordPress or Magento, God, no, totally the wrong thing. There are other better ways to make those things more performant. This is very much one of those things I say is pick it for the right use case. I would recommend for things like small microservices with high throughput. I would recommend for tools that maybe aren't using PSR7 or HTTP as a protocol. So one of the big things that we are doing, as you already know, Tom, but for everyone else's benefit, one of the big things we're doing where I work now is we're looking to switch to using GRPC for all of our internal traffic. So we've really kind of I've really kind of bought into the bandwagon of gRPC and what it's capable of doing for us and what potential there is for things as it develops and goes forward. So we're really looking to do that, but trying to get gRPC working through other mechanisms is really hard. So trying to do it through RoadRunner makes this a doddle, makes it really, really easy to do. So if you find you're going to be doing the same kind of thing, looking for gRPC, or even not gRPC, maybe just wanted to do HTTP2 as a default, it has some really nice features built into HTTP2 that mean you don't have to reconfigure Apache and Nginx and start managing those and get into the loophole of what directive goes where and how this becomes almost a no-brainer. But that said, you can do all these things with Nginx and Apache. You just have to spend a lot more time building it out and configuring everything. The key that RoadRunner gives you there is, well, as you saw, there's almost no configuration. All the configurations, the sensible defaults are all there for you. So just basically saying, I want to turn it on and use it. So, and all of the code that I've shown you, just for everyone's reference, is all code that's out of their documentation and their readmes. I've not really done anything fancy other than add a couple of exclamation marks in places and just sequence them together. So you can go and copy and paste all these yourself and test it out. It'll take you 20 minutes to do, and you'll have the same demos working. And it's very, very clean, very, very simple, and very well documented. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
So for other people's benefit as well, there's a lot of really good integrations with other tools and frameworks. Let me share my screen again, just because I can. I'll share the list that I've got here of the sort of default feature list that they give you, and you can see on the bottom right of that right-hand list. So it's like integrations with Symfony, Laravel, Slim, KPHPs, and Expressive. There's lots of things. I mean, it does Laminus as well rather than Send. So there's loads of things that you can integrate with that are already out there and already working. One big one is Laravel Octane. If any of you are Laravel fans and you've been watching what they're up to, they have Octane is their sort of super powered Laravel on steroids kind of option that is built on top of one of two platforms, either RoadRunner being one of them, or Swool, I'm not sure whether it's a long O or a short O. But that's those are two things that basically doing the same thing in slightly different ways. RoadRunner is designed to be much more self-contained and quick to get set up and started. Swool needs a bit more configuration, but offers some more advanced features beyond what RoadRunner does at the moment. But Laravel's really pushing hard on this being the future of how it's going. And it wouldn't surprise me if this kind of mechanism, not saying RoadRunner, but the longer term for the future, that if this kind of mechanism becomes something that we look at in PHP 9 or whatever comes next, they start making this kind of thing to be actually, we could build a development server to do this, and that development server could be production ready and kind of bypass the need for Apache and Nginx altogether. Just because there's an awful lot of promise in that, using newer paradigms, newer technologies, taking the best bits of Go and making the best bits of Go directly available to PHP. I didn't really touch on it much here, but there's a full RPC integration using sockets between the Go runtime that is RoadRunner and the PHP runtime. You can actually cross-communicate between the two. You can use shared memory and shared threads. You can do some really clever stuff, which means you can actually control the entire web server from inside of PHP and vice versa. It comes with like built-in job handling. So if you're a fan using RabbitMQ or PubSub or SQS or insert your message broker of choice here, You can configure it so that you can use the built-in workflow that they've got for just pulling a message off and feeding it into your PHP. So that boilerplate just literally becomes boilerplate inside of the server, not part of your application. Your business logic becomes pure in a sense. So there's an awful lot you can do with that. So sorry, I'm rambling on again.